Abilities in complexity. Today, we're discussing a concept called digital replica. It sounds futuristic, but we're going to keep it grounded, especially for banking and regulated technology environments. Joseph, let's start from first principles. What is a digital replica?
A digital replica is not an AI clone, and it is not a chatbot pretending to be a person. It is a governed AI representative that learns how a professional works within a specific role and context. In banking, that context is critical. A loan operations specialist, a payments architect, a product owner, or a compliance reviewer does not just answer questions. They observe information, judge risk, prioritize work, communicate decisions, escalate exceptions, and act within boundaries. A digital replica learns those repeated work patterns over time.
So it is not just learning documents or policies.
Learning documents is useful, but it is not enough. A policy tells us what is allowed, but an experienced professional knows how to apply that policy in a real situation. They know what to check first. They know what feels risky. They know when to ask for evidence. They know when not to escalate. They know when escalation is necessary. They also know how to explain a decision clearly to different stakeholders. That is what I call professional DNA.
Let's define that. What exactly is professional DNA?
Professional DNA is the operating signature of a person in a role. I would break it into 6 dimensions: observe, judge, prioritize, communicate, escalate, and act. Let's take Henry as an example. Henry works in loan operations. Every day he handles cases with missing documents, SLA pressure, income variance, KYC exceptions, and relationship manager follow ups. Henry's digital replica should learn patterns such as: Henry checks the SLA timer before the document checklist. Henry reviews exception history before deciding whether to escalate. Henry treats a missing bank statement as recoverable if the customer has a clean exception history. Henry escalates income variance when it crosses policy threshold and supporting documents are insufficient. Henry writes updates using issue, evidence, owner, deadline, and next action. Those patterns become Henry's professional DNA.
That makes the idea much clearer, but it also raises a sensitive question. How do we stop this from becoming employee surveillance?
That is the first serious design question. A digital replica should not silently monitor a person. It should begin with a transparent mode called shadow mode. In shadow mode, the system observes only approved work signals. It does not take action. It does not automate. It does not convert every observation into truth. For example, it may capture that Henry opened a loan case, checked SLA, reviewed missing documents, looked at exception history, read RM comments, selected an action, or drafted a message. These are structured work signals. They are not private life signals.
So the system is shadowing work patterns, not watching the person.
Exactly. That distinction matters. The purpose is not to control Henry. The purpose is to learn how Henry applies judgment in a work context. And even then, the system should not decide, I have learned Henry. It should propose candidate patterns and ask Henry to acknowledge them.
This is the acknowledgement step.
Yes, I call it the Acknowledgement Gate. Suppose the system observes that Henry escalated several mortgage refinancing cases. A weak system may conclude Henry escalates mortgage refinancing cases. that could be wrong. The real pattern may be Henry escalates only when income variance exceeds policy threshold and supporting documents are insufficient. So the digital replica should show Henry a candidate pattern. When income variance exceeds policy threshold and supporting documents are insufficient, escalate to senior credit operations. Henry can then accept it, edit it, or reject it.
That is important. The digital replica is not secretly learning and acting. Henry shapes the DNA.
Exactly. In banking, learning must be visible, explainable, and governed. Professional DNA should be treated like a controlled operating profile, not a hidden assumption inside an AI model.
Once Henry acknowledges enough patterns, what happens next?
Then the digital replica can move into co working mode. In co working mode, the replica recommends actions, but Henry still approves before execution. For example, a low risk personal loan top up case arrives. Documents are complete, SLA is normal, no policy exception exists. The replica may say, recommended action, complete operations checklist, and notify the relationship manager. Reason? This matches Henry's approved low risk case pattern. Confidence? 91%. Approval required. Henry can approve, edit, or reject.
So the replica is useful, but still controlled.
It becomes a co worker, not an uncontrolled agent. Only later, selected patterns may move into bounded autopilot.
Why use the phrase bounded autopilot instead of full autonomy?
Because in banking, full autonomy is the wrong starting point. It sounds broad, uncontrolled, and risky. Bounded autopilot means the replica can act only within approved patterns, low risk boundaries, policy rules, audit controls, and defined escalation routes. For example, Henry's replica may be allowed to complete a checklist for low risk document complete cases, but it should not autonomously handle KYC mismatches, income variance above threshold, complaint sensitive customers, high value exceptions, or cases requiring manual approval. A good digital replica must know when to act and when not to act.
Let's talk architecture without going too deep technically. What building blocks are needed?
At a high level, there are several layers and blocks. First, the workplace or workbench where the professional does real work. In Henry's case, that is the loan operations workbench. Then, the replica shadower, which observes approved work signals. Third, the signal classifier, which classifies those signals into observe, judge, prioritize, communicate, escalate, and act. Fourth, the professional DNA builder, which converts repeated signals into candidate patterns. Fifth, the acknowledgement gate, where Henry accepts, edits, or rejects patterns. Sixth, the professional DNA store, where approved patterns are versioned and governed. Then, the digital replica runtime, which combines current work context, approved DNA, relevant skills, and policy boundaries. Eighth, the policy and autonomy engine, which decides whether the replica can observe, recommend, execute after approval, or act under bounded autopilot. Finally, the replica audit trail, which records what happened and why.
So, what is the biggest mistake leaders should avoid?
The bigger opportunity is not replacing professionals. It is preserving and scaling professional judgment safely.
That is a useful angle. It is not just operations, it can apply to expert judgment roles.
Final question.
Final question. What should leaders remember about digital replica?
Digital Replica is not about making AI sound like Henry. It is about making Henry's professional judgment visible, governable, reusable, and safely actionable. The value is not imitation. The value is decision continuity under control.